muito boa tarde, bem-vindos novamente. Continuaremos agora esta viagem por diferentes sistemas de ensino superior. Vamos ter a apresentação do professor Jussi Välimaa sobre o sistema de ensino superior finlandês. Just a brief presentation. So Jussi Välimaa was professor of higher education studies at the Finnish Institute for Educational Research. He was visiting professor at various places. He was in 2017 he was appointed director of the Finnish Institute for Educational Research. And he is an editor, an associated editor with a number of journals, an active researcher in higher education, and also a consultant to the Government of Ireland, the World Bank, and an expert to the Council of Europe. And he will be talking to us about the Finnish higher education. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your kind invitation to this educational talk. I feel really privileged to be here speaking to the experts in Portuguese higher education. Yes, now I have to. At the end of every talk, there should be a joke, but you know, Finns don't have a sense of humor. So I will be speaking about the Finnish higher education, and I will be discussing these issues in my presentation. How Finnish higher education has changed, what is the contemporary Finnish system of higher education, and how does society influence on the changes of higher education. I do not think that any system of higher education can be exported to another country, but because every system has its own history, its own dynamics, its own traditions. But I do think that we can, in a positive case, we can learn from other countries' experiences. And so now that I'm speaking about the Finnish higher education system, I think that you could think that does it make sense in the Portuguese case? I will start with short contextual facts about Finland. The first one is that we have more than 1,300 kilometers border with Russia. And the other thing is that the distance between capital of Finland and Ukraine is less than the length of Finland from south to north. Finland became an independent republic in 1917 after a very bloody civil war. Whites were fighting against the Reds. Whites win. Nowadays, population is about 5.6 million people. Finland is a Nordic welfare state, meaning that there is a universal welfare benefits for every citizen, including free education, free healthcare, social services, safe society, etc. There is no corruption, which according to corruption index does not mean that there would not be corruption in a country, but it means that there are processes and institutions that try to punish for corruption. There is also a high level of generalized trust in Finnish society. I'll speak a bit more about that later. And I think that it's also important to remember that the income differences in Finland are among the smallest in the world. So this has something to do with well, you can see it also on street where showing your wealth is not socially acceptable, with the difference, with the exception of cars, of course. Yes, so To start with, I will give you a very brief historical introduction to contemporary Finnish higher education system to show how the system has developed and what kind of social role it has in Finnish society. And I do think that, trained as a historian, I do think that it may help to understand the social dynamics of Finnish higher education. The first, I begin with the geopolitical context of Finland, because this has influenced our understanding of the world, of course, but culturally and politically Finland has been east and west in Europe, meaning that, as one sociologist told that, Finland has an ambivalent relationship with Sweden, culturally and politically ambivalent relationship with Russia. This culturally ambivalent relationship with Sweden means that in every national sports, ice hockey, soccer, etc., we have to beat the Swedes. And they, of course, try to do the same to the little brother. And politically ambivalent relationship with Russia is that in Finnish politics there has been quite a strong pragmatic relationship with first with the Soviet Union and then Russia, because it will be our neighbor in any case. When we look at Finland, historically Finland was one of the core areas of Swedish kingdom more than 700 years. And this has led to a situation where the Swedish laws, Swedish culture is very close to the Finnish ones. Finland was also part of Russian Empire as an autonomous Grand Duchy, and this means that some parts of our civil servant thinking comes from the Russian bureaucracy. And this has been quite hard lessons, especially during this neoliberal period which has a very other way of thinking about civil service or the role of state and civil servants in society. Being part of Swedish kingdom also meant that Western juridical tradition has been the basis for social life in Finland. I think that this is not necessarily a big thing in Portugal, but in Finland, being close to the Russia, which does not follow this Western juridical tradition, where the law is the basis for social life. In Russian tradition, strongman makes the law and is the law. This also means that Finland was connected to the Western cultural sphere, which meant Catholic Church at that time. And it also meant that Finnish students were sent to European universities from the 13th century. First to Paris and then to other universities, Prague and Wittenberg later. So, and these Finnish students were trained mainly as priests, of course, because Catholic Church was the only universal organization in Europe. And I was a bit surprised to note that the popes of Catholic Church were mainly lawyers of canonical law, not theologians. So this is the map of Finland from the late 17th century. As you can see here, well, here is the border of Finland and Sweden against Russia. The border between Finland and Sweden, which is nowadays here, didn't exist, of course, because Finland was part of Russia. At that time happened a thing that an event that was really important for the Finnish, for the development of Finnish higher education, and that was the establishment of the first university in Finland, Royal Academy in Åbo. There were more than one aim of establishing this university. First, it aimed to strengthen the Swedish kingdom, both by training civil servants, or you cannot say that they were trained civil servants, but sons of lower nobility and burghers went to the Royal Academy, and they could be servants for the king. The other main thing was to defend Lutheran Church and religion. That was the time of the 30 Years' War in Europe, and so defending the Lutheran religion was a matter of defending the Swedish kingdom as well, because there were battles over the Swedish kingdom, and battles with the ideological battles with the Catholic theologians. So yes, so that's how it went. And the third one was to develop backward provinces, which one of the promoters of this establishment was thinking that people living in these eastern provinces of Swedish kingdom were lazy, ignorant, and too much drinking. I think this was not necessarily totally wrong picture. But so what I'm aiming to say is that there was a strong social pressure to establish this university. Actually, it was the northmost university in the world at that time. Another important period for the development of Swedish for the Finnish, okay. Oh yes. Took place as a consequence of Napoleonic wars in the Nordic region. Russian troops invaded Finland 1809, and that meant the discontinuation of this relationship with the Swedish kingdom. Finland became an autonomous Grand Duchy, and this was important for the Finnish region for many reasons. First, it meant it did not mean a change of the structure of society, because all the Swedish institutions were allowed to continue in Finland. This meant the university. The name of the university was, of course, changed from Royal Academy into Imperial Alexander University, and it was changed from Åbo, the previous priest city of Finland, into new capital of Finland, Helsinki. Later, that university became the University of Helsinki. It also means that the Finns were allowed to keep their religion. They had the control of the system of education. Actually, the Lutheran Church was responsible for education of the nation at that time. And the Swedish laws were also respected, or they continued in Finland. It also meant that for the first time, Finland had its own government, and all the tax money, about 50% of the tax collected in Finland, was sent to Sweden before this autonomous Grand Duchy. So all the tax money could be used for the development of Finland. It also meant that that university had the monopoly to train all the civil servants for this for Finland, and the internal administration was growing. Actually, the population of Finland doubled during the 19th century. Finland also had own currency and central bank. So this was for the development of society. Being autonomous Grand Duchy was a very good deal for Finland at that time. And Finns were very loyal to the Tsars. When we look at the trends of the 19th century from the higher education perspective, one of the important things was that the Humboldtian ideas of university were accepted in Finland. There were pressures to transform university into more vocational universities, which was the case in Russia. But in Finland, we follow the Humboldtian ideas, which meant that university had institutional autonomy to decide all the academic matters and economics and they so meaning that university has a real institutional autonomy. There was a freedom of studying and teaching, and there was academic freedom for professors. This was really important because Finnish nationalism started to develop under the protection of university, I could say. There were Finnish-minded university professors who developed the philosophical basis for the nation, for the Finnish nation. Because the idea was, well, it was basically learned from the philosophy of Friedrich Hegel, but transformed into the idea that history advances through state. But there cannot be a state without a nation. And there cannot be a nation without a language. At that time, Finnish was spoken by about 85% of the population, but Swedish was the official language. So if you went to university, to courts or whatever state office, you needed to speak Swedish. And the aim of those Finnish-minded professors, Fennomans, was to create the nation by developing the language, by developing the system of education, by educating the nation, and also by nationalizing the educated, meaning Swedish-speaking elite. So this was this political movement that started as a cultural movement, the Finnish nationalism. And developed by professors, protected by professors, it became very popular among the university students as well, even though the official teaching language in university continued to be Swedish. And as a consequence of this process, the university in Finland, this Imperial Alexander University, was the kind of cradle of the Finnish nationalism. And without this development that took place during the 19th century, there would not have been preconditions for the Finnish nation state. So in this Finnish identity, this was a very important period, and it also led to the definition of university as a cultural institution, and this understanding still continues. But the world changed with the development of industry. There started to be debates on broadening the training that was given in university. University had a very strong humanistic, medical, juridical traditions, but no practical sciences or technical or commercial were part of the university training. So this led to demands to respond to the changes in the world, and this led to the situation where technical and commercial education started to develop in 1840s, 1850s, and it finally it resulted in the establishment of business schools and technical university at the end of the 20th century. But because of this very strong humanistic orientation of university, it was hard to integrate them into the university teaching. But the case was different with agriculture and forestry, because those disciplines, agriculture and forestry, were integrated in the university as a faculty by 1890s. It also led to the situation where the university degrees, especially with medicine and law, they became more professional, meaning that you could not be a lawyer or a doctor without university degree. So this kind of professionalization took place in the university. Whereas humanities were the only discipline that was not experiencing this kind of professionalization development, and they oriented to creating the history and culture for this emerging nation. They were studying Finnish language and culture, and of course you can think that when you study a topic like Finnish language, you actually create this entity as Finnish language in academic sense, and it also helps to develop the language. To give a simple example, the words for science, culture, university did not exist in Finnish before the end of the 19th century. And of course, it would be quite difficult to defend a dissertation if you don't have words. It also meant that no. This is funny. Yep. It also meant that the establishment of teacher training colleges, because there was a decision actually suggested by the Russian Tsar to Russian Emperor to establish folk schools in Finland. Finnish folk schools were very backward at that time, and the new system of folk schools was developed based on the European experiences. So there was a very famous reformer called Synneus who visited all the European countries and took, as he saw, the best of them when establishing the plan for the folk schools, and he also established these teacher training colleges, which started 1863. So these teacher training colleges help to spread this evangelium of nationalism into the villages in Finland. So it helped. They were kind of modernization agents in the rural villages. But it also teacher training colleges also opened a channel for social mobility for sons of farmers and also for females, because university studies were forbidden for female students till 1870s and actually till 1890s. So this was created a new opportunities for talented young people to study in higher education. And here I took these two examples. I find it quite interesting that you can what were the sports suits for female students by the 1980s. And this is not just an anecdote, because in the Finnish folk school there were also subjects taught were not only academic, history, reading, writing, calculating, mathematics, etc., but also practical skills and something like sports. And here you can see the students of the male section of the teacher training college. I have so far no. This is slower than me. Now I have approached a little bit of the relationship, between higher education and society, how it has influenced on its developments. I will now focus more on that, and especially the 20th century. As I mentioned, Finland emerged through a very bloody civil war. One of the analyses or explanations for this civil war was the interpretation that the system of education had failed. It had failed to train loyal, law-obedient citizens. So, after a heated debate in Finnish parliament in 1921, they made a law on compulsory education. This led to the establishment of schools to every Finnish village by 1930s. It also led to the expansion of secondary education, gymnasiums all over the country. And finally, it increased the pressure to go the number of the higher education students. At that time, higher education was an elite system, not only because only some 6% of the age cohort went to university, but also because the university professors acted normally as ministers in the Finnish government during the 1920s, 1930s, prime ministers and others. And I find it quite interesting when you look at the newly independent Eastern European states that it was quite often the university professors that were in the government, which I think it is quite natural. People who have a wider understanding of society, they tend to end up in government in the times of crisis. This is just my interpretation. I don't have a theory to back up this. But there were also established private universities in Finland and higher education institutions. Two universities in the same town, in Swedish Åbo, in Finnish Turku. One of them was Swedish-speaking, and the other one was Finnish-speaking, because at that time there was a very heated cultural debate in Finnish society on the position and the legal status of Swedish language in Finnish state. And of course, these two universities that were separated by about 1 kilometer, they did not cooperate at any way. And this situation lasted till, well, 20 years ago. Traditions matter. There were also established a technical university and 2 business schools in Helsinki, one for Swedish speakers and the other for Finnish speakers. I also mentioned that elite education function is still continuing in Finnish society, meaning that it's very hard to get access to especially to medicine and law. And the socioeconomic background of the students is high. Why I show this picture is to show that what has been the trend of the Finnish economy on the basis of the structure of employment sector. As you can see, till 1840s, meaning the Second World War, Finland was mainly agricultural country with a sector of paper mill industry, some structure and some services. But it was really heavily based on this basic educational sector, forestry and agriculture. After the Second World War, the change into a society, into an industrialized society and society which has a very strong service sector has been quite rapid. I also would like to point out this sudden drop of the employment that took place early 1990s when Finland was hit by a very severe economic downturn. But 20% of the labor force was unemployed, and it took place in 1 year's time. Higher education was heavily cut, and it was a very difficult time for universities and for Finnish society. Okay, but this is to show you that the economic structure of Finland has changed quite rapidly, especially after the Second World War, and this has influenced on the higher education as well. One of the changes after the Second World War was that there was a new power coalition that emerged in Finnish society. So it was the center and left parties that were in power from late 1940s to 1980s. This was significant because those parties they were supporting the reforms in society and reforms in the education, social policies, health service, and these changes were known as the Nordic welfare state, or defined as Nordic welfare state by 1980s. Education has had a very strong role in the making of this Nordic welfare state, because the main aim was to create a fair and equal society. And education was seen as an instrument in making society fair and equal. But it was also seen that, and one of the goals was to increase equal educational opportunities for all the citizens, indifferent of their gender, socioeconomic background, or geographical location. Finland is the 6th largest country in Europe geographically. So this last point was quite important. And higher education was one of the instruments in making a fair and equal society. in 1960s also macroeconomic perspectives, namely manpower planning and mobilizing talent reserves, was seen was supporting the expansion of Finnish higher education. But reforming higher education, well, it was quite significant, and because the number of university students grew very, very rapidly. In 30 years, 4 times. There was established a sector of higher vocational education, which were called first as Politécnicos, nowadays Universities of Applied Sciences, during the 1990s. And what was important with that reform was that all these universities of applied sciences, they were started as experiments. Experiments which meant that they needed to develop their management structures, their quality assurance systems, because they consisted of 5 to 8 former secondary level vocational institutions that were merged together. And after they had been developing their activities for a number of years, Finnish Higher Education Evaluation Council came and evaluated whether they had achieved their goals. And if they had achieved their goals, so the Finnish government would give them a permanent license to operate as universities of applied sciences. In the beginning, there was more than 30 these universities of applied sciences. Now they are 22. So this kind of merging and developing processes have been taking place from the 1990s, and it has not stopped yet. There was also a reform, created a comprehensive school system. I'm saying this because it's quite important for the international reputation of Finnish education, because with this comprehensive school reform, the idea is to give equally high quality education to all Finnish citizens during the first 9 years of their schooling. So PISA studies are one outcome of this reform. It also meant that the reform of teacher education colleges were integrated into universities, and now, and after 1970s, all Finnish teachers have a master's degree in education. So this describes, I think, a bit how the number of students have developed from the beginning of the 20th century. I also want to show this picture.
Yes, I think it's on.
Yeah, thank you. Is it? Yeah, works. Because I would like to pay attention to the fact that this was the system of education from 1960s. And the important thing here was that we had this basic education. Sorry, I could find this only in Finnish. Basic education, and after basic education, which was 6 years, you had no chance but to go to vocational education, and from there to secondary level vocational education, and that was it. If you went to academic track from these folk schools, you could continue to gymnasiums and then to universities and higher education. So the main problem with this sector of education was that actually this was no. So actually this was a dead end. what you see here is the Finnish system of today, and crucial is that you can continue from basic education to general upper secondary schools or to vocational institutions, and from there you can go to universities of applied sciences, bachelor degrees and master's degree, or you may go to universities, bachelor degrees, master's degree, and no matter where you have started your educational path, you can end up being a doctor in university if you wish so. Yes. So this 1960s system, according to my interpretation, means an education system that was appropriate for mechanical industrial society, whereas the contemporary system is appropriate for digital industrial society, where with the principle of lifelong learning, it's in reality it's possible to continue your studies always. Well, I will jump this because this is how the higher education looks like today. We have 13 universities, or public universities. We have only publicly funded higher education institutions in Finland. 13 universities, 11 of them are independent legal entities, and 2 of them are run by foundations. They are all funded by the Ministry of Education. And in addition, we have a National Defense College. It's a hybrid between actually universities of applied sciences and universities. We have 24 publicly funded universities of applied sciences, and 22 of them are under Ministry of Education. And in addition, we have a police college under Ministry of Interior and Ålands Yrkeshögskola, which is run by the Åland Autonomous Area. And 6 university centers, which are hybrid organizations, meaning there are teaching and research activities taking place in these university centers, and they can be from more than, well, 1 to 3 universities can have these activities in these centers. Starting place is offered to over 100% of the relevant age cohort in universities and universities of applied sciences. Funding is coming mainly from Ministry of Education. 2/3 of the funding comes from Ministry of Education, and the rest is based on competition, but it's public funding. The money from private companies it has never been more than 5%. I don't know how, but it's very low. Why we have no tuition fees? The main fact is that in Finland, students are defined as young adults who should be independent of their parents. So that's why they are citizens in need of help. And they should not be studying with their family's monies. Steering of the system is quite strong by the Ministry of Education and Culture. And what also is important is that in Finland we don't have a ranking system of our higher education institutions. Instead, Finnish Education Evaluation Center supports the development of higher education institutions. This may sound odd to my Anglo colleagues, but that's how it is. This I would like you to encourage to look at the number of Finnish polytechnics and universities as a value statement. The map is a bit old, but indifferent of that, you can see cities like Tampere, where there is both university and polytechnic or University of Applied Sciences. Some places where there is only university, and some places where there is only polytechnic. Typical story is that in every Finnish city, in every bigger Finnish city, there is a university and a polytechnic. But what is quite interesting to my mind is that even though universities University for Applied Sciences are defined as equal but different, there are differences in the student profiles. 90% of the university students, they have a matriculation exam, meaning that they come from general upper secondary schools. 2.5% have a vocational qualification, and 4% have both of them. Whereas in universities of applied sciences, only half of the students have a matriculation examination, and 30% have only vocational qualification, and about 9% have both of them. So in universities, the student profile is more academic, from the academic track on basic education, whereas in universities of applied sciences, it's more vocational. And I think that this has importance if you look at it from higher education policy perspective. What could the students with vocational orientation do if there would not be universities of applied sciences? I also would like to show something about the differences between universities and University of Applied Sciences. There are two main differences. The first one is that in universities you can universities award all the degrees, bachelor, master's, and doctoral degrees. Whereas in universities of applied sciences, they have only bachelor degrees and applied master's degrees. In Finnish, it's not called a master's degree, but in English it is. The basic idea is that after a couple of years in your studies in a University of Applied Sciences, you may apply for this master's degree program to develop your company or your profession and to have this extra qualification. The other main difference is with the research orientation. In university, universities do basic research or foundation research. And as my colleague said, the difference between basic and applied is very blurred. But anyway, the main idea in universities of applied sciences is not to do foundation research or basic research, but to do development-oriented research and development projects and activities. Also, the orientation of universities is different because the aim is to be academically and internationally recognized center for research and training qualified academics, whereas in universities of applied sciences, the main orientation is training and education of professionals, meaning training people with practical qualifications to do their professions, whether they are nurses or engineers or in in commercial field. It's all, and one of the important differences is also the fact that in universities, in the university sector, all the disciplines are covered by universities, whereas in Politécnicos, universities of applied sciences, there are only 8 fields of education. Okay, and now I'm approaching the end of my presentation. When we look at the role of higher education in Finnish society, I think it's still a fact that there is a high social status of higher education in Finland. Not only because of the tradition and the traditional importance, but also status-wise, meaning if you want to have a good job, it's better to go to a university or to a polytechnic. And it's also, what I'm saying, even though the University of Helsinki played a prominent role in the history, it still has universities have this traditionally high status in Finnish society. And what is quite important is that nowadays knowledge and knowledge-based society, knowledge-based industry is very much depending on the research capacity of universities and the capacities of universities of applied sciences. So universities are recognized as engines or the best guess for a bright future for Finland. And education and higher education is seen crucially important for the future of Finnish society. This picture shows that, this is in Finnish again. So there is the employment of graduates. This is from basic education. This is from vocational schools, etc. This is from higher education. So, meaning the higher the education, the better chances to get employed. For higher education degrees, it's typical to be over 80% employed. And as you can see, there is almost a 10% difference between different levels of education. I also said that in Finnish society, higher education has a high social status. This is a Finnish science barometer from 3 years' time. And the most trusted institutions in Finnish society in this order are police, defense forces, and universities and other higher education establishments. Followed by juridical system, science and research, technical research center, and universities of applied sciences, Academy of Finland. Least appreciated are political parties, Nokia, large companies, NGOs, church. Of course, this describes the images of people having on different institutions of society. And I think that defense forces is especially understandable in the current situation, like the police forces. But higher education, universities have really a high status in Finnish society. And it's interesting that political parties are the least trusted, but the juridical system, is very appreciated, and who makes the laws? Now I'm closing the end of my presentation. I pay attention to a couple of things. First one is that I said that equality and equity have been important in Finland in the making of Nordic welfare state. They still are core values in Finnish society. In education, we still believe in equal educational opportunities and are continuously concerned if this does not happen. There is also, according to empirical studies, there is a high trust in fellow citizens and the institutions of society, which is normally called as generalized trust, and this includes the system of education. This generalized trust in Finnish society in the sector of education means trust in the professional autonomy of teachers, academics, professors. It is shown in the high status of academic freedom. You can read it from the Finnish constitution. And it also is the basis for institutional autonomy of both schools and higher education institutions in Finnish society. Well, this is the second last slide. When we look at the Finnish system of education, we need to remember the role of the state. In Finland, the role of the state is important because state regulates the system of education through normative steering, meaning legislation, through economic steering, being the main funder of the system, and through performance agreements, through information steering. There are a number of evaluations, accreditations, and data banks that make it easy to find, to get data on Finnish system of education. And in this Nordic context, despite the strong role of state in Finland, higher education institutions are understood as autonomous. Academic freedom is guaranteed in the constitution, as I said. So in the Finnish context, it's natural to think that we have a beneficial state that helps our higher education institutions, and higher education institutions act responsibly. I think I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we all learned a lot more about internal coherence of the Finnish system. We're a bit, we don't have a lot of time, but I think we have 5 minutes for questions at least. So I wanted to open the floor. Portanto, questões que queiram fazer. A professora Amaral queria fazer uma questão.
Jussi, can I summarize what you said about your system? It's still a binary system, clearly defined, although you call Universities of Applied Science to the old Polytechnics, but they have different roles. The only universities are allowed to offer a PhD, and they concentrate in pure research more than the Polytechnic or the University of Applied Science. Don't you have any tensions there? Is there any movement to change this?
Thank you. That's very, very good point. We have had Universities of Applied Sciences for 30 years. And throughout that time, the rectors of this sector have demanded that the universities of applied sciences should have the right to award doctoral degrees, and universities have resisted that. The other thing is that in order to make the system more efficient, there has been supported cooperation between universities and high universities of applied sciences. There are two different models applied at the moment. The first one is cooperation, so that in the fields that where it's common to have in the common fields, it makes sense to have these common courses, especially in commercial education, IT, information technology, coding, for example. The other model is that a university owns the University of Applied Sciences. And this is, for example, in Tampere University. I'm the vice chair of the board of the Tampere University, and I follow that process quite closely. It's not a very easy process. The main problem with this close cooperation is the different orientation. In the teaching of University of Applied Sciences, the main aim is to create qualified professionals for certain professions. Whereas in universities, the main aim is to provide a broader understanding of the field, broader theoretical understanding. So, for example, in engineering, where you would think that it would be easy to have common courses, but it's possible only in very limited topics. The same with business studies, the same with ICT. So the different orientation makes it difficult. And then we have practical problems. There should be time slots open for university and the vocational sector students so that they could take the courses. And another practical problem is that the campuses should locate quite close to each other. And even though you could think that in online teaching these are not problems, but then the problem is the different orientation. The main thing is that universities of applied sciences, they train people who are really needed in the Finnish economy. Mm-hmm. Skillful professionals for certain professions. And this is really needed by the Finnish society. But we also need those academically trained professionals who have broader understanding. So one example in engineering, that if you want to construct a bridge, an engineer from the University of Applied Sciences can do the calculations, but engineer from the university can make the plan. So there are 10.
It's right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Am I speaking too much?
No. Here you go. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there are tensions, but the Minister of Education has been quite clear that we need both sectors. The Finnish society needs both sectors. Actually, I was in the group making the higher education strategy for Ireland 2011, and the same challenges were there. And now we can see learn from the Irish experience what it takes to turn a University of Applied Sciences into a university.
Ok, so temos tempo para mais uma questão. Estou a tentar. So, Professor Barnett.
Jussi, I want to run your talk and Philip's talk together in one respect, and that's the issue of the role of the state. It's clear, I think, from the two presentations we've had that the state can be and is normally very powerful in designing, steering, shaping a higher education system. And that poses a number of problems for me. It poses the problem as to what we mean by university. States will push a system in their own interests, in their own way. But the idea of the university has come to stand for universal interests. And so there's a tension here, it seems to me, as between the interests of the state and what we take a university to be. And just very quickly, I'll push that a little bit more. It's clear from the two presentations that there are issues, for example, over the award of the title professor as to the powers to award doctorate degrees, as to the autonomy you have within society. So there are fundamental issues here, it seems to me, in front of, quote, the design of a higher education system and the very idea of university. And by the way, I think we should completely ditch the very notion of the Humboldtian University, because that went 100 years ago.
Ron, did you have a question or just a comment? Yeah, well, because I think that it's indeed the role of the state is important, and in Nordic system, I could say that it should be, because they are using our money, our taxpayers' money. So they have a legitimate role in steering the system of higher education. But then the question is should the state be supporting the academic drift, so the will of the lower status higher education institutions to become universities, or should the state be trying to prevent these universities of applied sciences to become small universities or poor universities, because it takes a lot of, not only money, but a lot of intellectual capacity to build a university. So in Finland, so far, the state has been resisting the will of the universities of applied sciences becoming universities. And this has been reflecting the will of Finnish society, I think so. So, but then it's also the question is whether we have a beneficial state or not, whether state is for us or against us. In Nordic countries, the normal understanding is that we have a beneficial state, that state is for us. And in this Nordic context, this kind of understanding that strong state independent institutions is natural.
Thank you. Nós estamos para lá da hora e, portanto, vamos terminar aqui esta sessão e regressamos. Vamos fazer um coffee break agora. Vamos tentar encurtar o coffee break um bocadinho e, portanto, regressávamos às 20 para as 4. Eu estou aqui a criar este horário agora, mas estou a assumir que 20 para as 4 é adequado. Mas, portanto, regressamos às 20 para as 4. Está bem? Até já.